This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the iRacing Esport Network, proudly presented tonight by SimSpeed TV. We're here for round number 9 of the Aussie Driver Search iRacing V8 Supercars Official Championship Series. And tonight we will be racing a little bit of a sprint here around Snetterton Racing Circuit in the UK. Again, one of these tracks that we would never see these V8 Supercars flying around, but thanks to the fantastic service at iRacing, we're going to be bringing you a very unique race this evening indeed. We have a massive split this evening of 32 cars, and they're all extremely high quality drivers tonight, so we're going to have an absolute ripper of a race. We already have seen some good racing at this track last Friday in the Australian Online Supercars Championship, and it's definitely showed that we are set up for a good race this evening. Joining me in the commentary booth tonight is someone we haven't seen for a little bit of a while. He's my least favorite teammate. He's also now a Daytona 24-hour champion, and he's our resident headlight specialist. I'd like to welcome back to the booth Mr. Bo Albert. And Bo, we're in for a good night of racing this evening.
Yeah, it looks like I've come back at just the right time, because look at the quality of drivers we've got. We've got drivers we haven't seen for a little while. We've got Richard Hampstead in there, which is great to see, as well as a whole bunch of other regulars who are very, very quick. Look at the likes of Andrew Gilliam, who's currently doing a fantastic job for the second week in a row after winning last week, of course, at the Charlotte Roval. We've got the likes of Jackson Zuslan Harlow, Cooper Webster, and Dane Warren. That is a very competitive top 5, all within 2
Really right, but I think you're just sorry. I think you're just having a few net troubles there, mate. But we'll carry on because qualifying is currently underway, and Richard Hampstead is currently leading the way on a 108 flat. Andrew Gilliam closely following behind, as is Jackson Suslan Harlow. And Andrew Gilliam obviously had a win, as you were saying, Bo, at the Roval last time out, and he's looking on form. He's really dancing with some big names here. We've got Dane Warren sitting down there in 6th position, Cooper Webster, Jackson Suslan Harlow, Brett Loxton, all these guys up in the top 6 right now, top 7 even, are big name drivers. And Andrew, and I mean, look at that, they're all separated by just 0.2 of a second. Very short course here this evening, obviously only a 1:08 lap, but nonetheless, having a 0.2 advantage over your opponents is not one that you would be comfortable with at all, as we're just watching James Mackey, who's currently trying to set a lap time down. He hasn't gotten one in just yet in his CMR team racing car. Coming up to the line now, trying to get to the line as fast as he possibly can, and he's going to go over and do a 108.492, which is going to pop him up into 14th position. So James Mackey, not too bad there, but will be looking for an improvement. And now having a bit of a look at Greg Sharp here, but there's a lot of drivers in the top 8, top 10 even at the moment, Bo, who are very, very competitive and very mixed up. And one name I'm not seeing up in there at the moment, which we would expect as well, is Wayne Burke.
Yeah, Wayne Burke not having the best of runs at the moment, but that said, he's only half a second off the pole time at the moment, and if he was to find just 0.2 of a second, which he won't, unfortunately, he's out of laps, but he would find himself in the top 10 of this field. So this is one of those circuits where just every little millimeter of track, just every little bit more you can extract out of the car makes such a big difference. So for these drivers, whoever's on pole, and at the moment it is Richard Hampstead, they've really maximized the lap to the best of their potential, and I'd love to see what their optimal sector times is, because around a circle like this, you're not going to be finding tenths of a second. It's all about the thousandths and hundredths of a second.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, especially around such a short course. We are running the 200 circuit, which is the shorter of variation. Obviously, the 300 is available, but the 200 is the one we are going with this evening. We've got our grid up for you on screen at the moment. So it's Richard Hampstead for TTL Esports and Brady Myers for TTL Esports, who are going to take out a front row lockout this evening, and they'll be followed very closely by Andrew Gilliam in the Pursuit Sim racing car and Jackson Suslan-Harlow in the TTL Esports machine as well. So those guys have really got that car hooked up nicely. 3 cars in the top 4, very impressive. Cooper Webster will start out of 5th position. Dane Warren will be starting in the Logitech G Altus Esports car for the first time on a Monday night here this evening. Brett Loxton in the KRF machine alongside Jack Boyd for 8th position. Then we have Kyle Stokes in 9th, and Chris Coxhead will round out the top 10.
Starting from the 6th row of the grid will be Marlon McMullen, and he has ERT's Jordan Ross alongside him, very close, and looks to be a good fight between those two. Just behind we have the likes of Damian Johnston, James Mackay, and Michael Taliantich. Of course, Pursuit Sim Racing recently picking up even more sponsorship, which is great for them guys. Brian Ball kicks things off from 16th on the grid, with Wayne Burke way further down the grid than we would normally expect, so let's look for him to fly through the grid in this 34-lap race, but he has to deal with the likes of James Duckworth, Greg Sharp, and Ethan Warren just behind.
Yeah, then we have Corey Preston, who's another name we'd expect much higher on the grid. James Scott, Mitchell Sealak, Jamie McKnight in 24th, Zach Baker in 25th, Thomas Hins in 26th position, Christian Smart in 27th, Justin Wallace in 28th, and the rest of our grid this evening, Ian Bird, Andrew Zackerson, Michael Cracknell, and Brock Cadday. And Michael Cracknell, who's the last qualified driver, he is an extremely experienced and from the past, a very quick driver in this car. So that just goes to show you the absolute strength of this field this evening. 3,700-ish is the strength of field for those of you wondering at home. But they're not worrying about that right now, because they are building up the revs at the front of this V8 Supercar field, and those TTL machines are off the line, and a great start from both of them. Unfortunately, Jackson Suslan-Harlow just behind did not get as good a start. He's coming under pressure from the ERT machine going down the inside there, and that's a nice job from Cooper Webster on the start. Dane Warren taking it nicely as well. A little bit of a bump and rub with Andrew Gilliam there as they just get a little bit out of shape. And all those cars, contact in the back there.
Wayne Burke is one of those cars I do believe, and there's more carnages. I think that might be James Boyd in the middle of the pack, and look at this for the amount of carnage. So many cars off in the road. Ian Bird, one of them. Damian Johnston also involved. The likes of James Mackay, Brian Borg, and Jack Boyd all involved in huge damage to Boyd's car, actually. So we'll get a replay up on screen now, but Zach, that could not have gone much worse in the turn 2.
No, not at all. Someone just came in a little bit hot into that, into the hairpin there. That just caused a
massive contact at the final corner, and that is sent. I think that was, who was that in the fence now? I'm struggling to find who it was, but we do have a car in the fence, one of the Zuva racing cars. It's Brett Loxton, actually, and that was coming through the bomb hole section in the corners, and they made big contact, and lucky did not have 2 cars in the fence, just the one.
Yeah, we're just going to stay on the replay of that so that we can get a view of that for you, ladies and gentlemen. And we can see here Dane Warren going side by side with Brett Loxton there and coming through into this next corner here. Now, presumably this next corner is where the contact happens. Oh, and on the entry into the corner, feel like there might have been a little bit of a netcode issue for those guys there. Brett Loxton, very unlucky there to be shunted off into the fence so hard. We'll just see if we can, hard to see from that angle that we have on screen at the moment, but that's a big hit for Loxton, and no doubt he will be out of contention for this evening. And it was Jack Boyd in the Gone Rogue Motorsports car who caused that big accident into turn number 2 on the first lap as well. So a lot of carnage in the opening lap of this. We have seen really good behavior from all these guys throughout the season. So that's a rather uncharacteristic start here at Snetterton, but they got pretty clean jump out the front. And at the moment, it looks like Richard Hampstead is still comfortably in the lead in that TTL Esports car, but Andrew Gilliam is managed to actually force his way past Brady Myers at some point as well. So he's doing a great job there, mixing it up in that big TTL sandwich up the front, and Cooper Webster did manage to get that move done also on Jackson Sussman-Harlow. Now on board with Dane Warren, who's on the back here of James Duckworth and is going to maybe go for a bit of a look down the inside. He's going to have to be a bit careful here because you then have to take the outside into the next corner, but he's covered that off nicely, and Duckworth giving him plenty of room there. So he'll continue on. Cooper Webster also coming under big pressure now from Jackson Sussman-Harlow.
Yeah, and Jackson Sussman-Harlow, very quick drive, a little bit too quick into the corner though, and have a bumper. Cooper Webster on the exit, doesn't unsettle him too much, and Cooper is able to keep things under control. And of course, Cooper did get a very nice result in AOSC on Friday night as well, so he knows what to do around Snetterton, but so does Jackson Sussman-Harlow, who, off the top of my head, I believe actually won the round overall, or at least did very, very successfully. But look at this battle we do have up the front of the field at the moment, which is great to see, with Andrew Gilliam, like you touched on for a moment there, Zach, that is really keeping in with this TTL cars at the moment. Richard Hampstead not pulling away at all at the moment, and was a 10th of a second slower on the last lap than Gilliam. And then Brady Myers was another 10th of a second quicker than Gilliam, so the top three all converging on one another.
Yeah, well, Gilliam really did put in a strong performance at the Roval last week. He had a very commanding lead. He won by over 5 seconds, but he definitely backed off in those last couple of laps because of that death chicane down the back of the circuit there, as Richard Hampstead just struggling to get the traction down. And one thing that we were talking about before this broadcast actually, Bo, was how critical getting the traction out of the hairpin is here. And if these guys aren't careful, because we don't have to pit tonight full fuel, subsequently they won't have to pit for tyres either. Presumably it would be a massive disadvantage to do so. So these guys are really going to have to look after the rubber and make sure that they actually have something towards the end of this race, because it's a short track. It's hard to break away into a pack. These guys are going to be fighting, I feel, pretty closely throughout the race, and they're going to have to save the rubber for the end when it really comes down to the business end of this race. And the track temperature is only going to climb. It's just after midday here on the server time, so the sun's going to keep on baking that track and possibly see the temps rise as well. So these guys are going to have to be really careful in the opening stage of this race that they don't burn out those tires too quickly. Yeah. And that was just Carl Stokes, who's just, I think, had a bit of a trip through the infield there. He was going side by side with someone. We'll get a CPR Karts replay for you now, as we have it up on screen. That was the TTL car of Jackson Sussman-Harlow there. And it looks like Kyle just went for a turn in a little bit early and managed to just grab the rear of Sussman-Harlow's car. We'll get an onboard with you so that we can see just how much room he had to work with there. And actually kind of seemed like Sussman-Harlow came over a little bit. Maybe got a bit of unexpected understeer there.
And Michael Cracknell's doing a bit of unexpected lawn mowing as well at the final corner. And I'm just having a look, and that's a bit of a... it's hard to tell from my current camera view if that was a hit from Wayne Burke, and it was in the end a big hit from Wayne Burke. And that's just sent him doing a bit of lawn mowing and just touched the wall ever so slightly, but nothing too damaged apart from just a bit of a bruised ego perhaps. But nonetheless, he's back on track. And in the background, we also have the 14 car of Chris Coxhead going for a big move at the chicane as well. So the midfield being as active as it always is, and that isn't something the midfield is well known for. That is not a place you want to be in one of these strength of field races.
No, not at all. And you were quite right about that hit, bro. We just saw that on the CPR Parts replay there. And that was a big hit there from Wayne Burke. And unfortunately, just a big overcorrection there from good old Crackers. But he'll press on regardless and bring home a good result. Just having a look now at James Scott in the ERT 29 car. He's following his teammate in Jamie McKnight there. And those guys are trying to press up onto the back of James Duckworth, but James has been putting in...
Gilliam for the race lead! Gilliam's up the inside and he's hit! He's hit Hampstead! Hampstead's gone around in front of his teammate, and all of a sudden Gilliam will lead, and Hampstead has been unceremoniously dumped to the back of the field almost. He's right back with Michael Talian's. He's just going to try and get on the action as well. Goes alongside the TTL SimsWorks sponsored car, and that's going to be all too easy, but what happened there? Into the hairpin between those two. We'll get a replay up on screen right about now, and I didn't think he was close enough, so I was very surprised when he did show the nose into this hairpin. You can see coming through this long right hand and now gets great run whereas Hampstead just bogs down. Actually, he doesn't get the best run, just a very late dive, doesn't probably commit soon enough, only cutting through the grass, and that was just a little bit unnecessary in my opinion from Gilliam. Of course, he's had some great results, but sometimes you have to know where your fights are.
He might have just outbraked himself there, and I mean, it's hard to do anything when you're in that situation. You kind of just got to hope that the guy ahead of you sees what's going on, and unfortunately for the two of them there, it's hard to say. I dare say he wasn't going for a move because he was really, really far back, but guess we will not know for the near future. And now having a look at Dane Warren, who's trying to recover his race. And after Richard Hampstead's now been turned around, he's picked up an extra spot and is looking at another TTL Esports car of Jackson Suslin-Harlow, who he's been trying to work on for the last couple of laps, but he's been making good progress though, and is right on the rear of that car at the moment as they come through this technical last section of the track. It's a very flat circuit here as Suslin-Harlow getting wide, and Dane Warren just sneaking a bit of a nose in there, showing that he's prepared to take any opportunity that he gets, as they just have to hug that right-hand side there so long with a tiny little kink at the end of that right-hander there. And Dane, unfortunately, not getting enough of a good exit to carry enough momentum to make a move on Jackson Suslin-Harlow here, but he's looking ever closer, and this is looking more like a move that might go down into the hairpin. Will Dane Warren come out? I think he'll have a bit of a look there. Very late on the brakes, nice and confident, maybe just locks up a little bit on the inside there, but gets the move done nice and cleanly on Suslin-Harlow. So he's now got a good gap out from that hairpin already, and he'll be looking to catch Cooper Webster just down the road, as we've just quickly glanced there to, I think that was a Wayne Burke looking very sad in the pits there, and he is out of contention for this race. Thomas Hinz and Marlon McMullen though having a bit of a scrap up in 14th position, and Marlon McMullen having a little bit of a look on Thomas, who's with a new team now with the Sim Racing channel, and it's unfortunate. I'm not sure if they have a livery for that V8 Supercar yet, but quite a good set of liveries that they have looking on their car, so it would be very nice to see one on Thomas's car. But he's doing a good job defending from the two-time at the moment as they come through this last part of the track again. And Thomas, not someone that we see in these V8 Supercar races all that often, but he always puts in a really solid effort when he comes in. I mean, we've got 32 of some of the best drivers in the V8 Supercar here this evening, and he's definitely up there mixing it with them.
Thomas is one of the nicest guys in this community, so it's great to see him out here having a run. He doesn't normally drive the V8, like he said, but
sorry, oh my goodness!
Ethan Warren almost getting turned, but now the TTL car is going to go past James Duckworth there. That's making up some more crowns, but mamma mia, I think I need to put in there, because that was crazy. You don't go 3 wide into a hairpin, and they've done it. And now look at this, thinking about the inside. They're all on the locked brakes at the moment. Almost a hit to the back of the TTL Esports car there as well. So we'll get a replay up on screen in just a moment's time. How about right now? Because I think we're going to need more than one, because you don't see 3 wide at Snetterton. It's one of those things you just don't do. And Ethan Warren with a horrible run out through turn 1, and look at Duckworth trying to capitalize as the TTL car goes up the inside, overshoots a little bit, and he's just the opportunist, and that could that should have 9 out of 10 times been Ethan Warren facing the wrong way. How he wasn't, I will never know.
I think 9 out of 10 cars, that would have been all 3 cars facing the wrong way. So kudos to those 3 drivers for making that work. And we just get another replay of it here, and just unbelievable that those guys were able to get through. And unfortunately for Ethan Warren, he was the big loser in all of that. And Richard Hampstead gets it done, but we will take you up to the lead of this race, because Brady Myers is looking for some revengeance for his teammate, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was not too shy of getting a little bit aggressive with the Pursuit Sim car up ahead of him. And keep in mind, he's also got Cooper Webster tucked in very closely behind, and a charging Dane Warren, who's ever presently charging up on these guys also. So Brady Myers, if the time to make a move is looking good, it's looking good now, but he just needs to work up a little bit more of he just needs to work on that gap a little bit more until he's able to do anything, although you never know, he might go for a pretty late lunge like his teammate was susceptible to or was succumbed to. Not this time round though. But this has been a great little 3-car pack at the front of this train, and Cooper Webster's not going anywhere either. And I dare say that in the next couple laps, with a bit of free air, Dane Warren will probably pull Jackson Suslin-Harlow and Kyle Stokes onto the back of this battle also. So that's going to be really great to see. And obviously Kyle Stokes was right up in there. He had to take a detour earlier also. So the race lead is definitely up for grabs for any of the guys, I reckon, in the top 6 at the moment before the end of this race.
Yeah, and that's fantastic to see. So many different drivers, so many different teams as well, with the likes of Pursuit Sim Racing, TTLs in there, ERT, Altus Esports, you know, all different teams fighting up the front, which is great to see. And as well, I love when the top 3 are all just slowly closing on one another. Cooper Webster has consistently been the fastest car in this little battle pack. And once again, the commentator's curse comes out. Now it's Andrew Gilliam who's the fastest car on this lap. So there's a bit of ebb and flow happening. But like you said earlier in the race act, a lot of them right now probably just looking after those Dunlop tires at the moment. Because if you cook them too early, your chance of a race win is absolutely gone.
Yeah, and they've already been squabbling quite a bit in the early stages of this race. So it wouldn't hurt for these guys just to calm down for a couple of laps, get their head down, see what they can do, and leave the racing until the end of it. That would be, you know, the sensible thing to do properly. However, we have been proven wrong time and time again because I don't know what it is about these V8 supercars. I don't know if it's because they've got big engines and 4 doors and they're a little bit robust, but every time these guys seem to get close to each other, they don't mind leaning panels onto each other. We're just having a bit of a look at Brock Caddy there on the CPR Kart Parts replay. He was he's a little bit further down the field. He's not particularly used to these V8 supercars, it has to be said. And he's been having a bit of a race with Greg Sharp down the back of the field here, and Greg going for a move down the inside, and Brock Caddy there giving it an extremely respectful amount of room there. So nicely done by those two guys, and Greg Sharp moves himself up in 30th.
Brady Myers with a big little wiggle there, and that has cost him a bunch of time to Andrew Gilliam, now over a second. But more importantly is the car behind. You can see on board at the moment, closing, looking, doesn't go for it though. But out of nowhere, Brady Myers has gone from being the hunter to the hunted, because he is just beginning to struggle a little bit, and his car is probably looking the worst out of them all. In fact, there's a bit of damage on the front of the car as well, which would not be helping in any way, shape or form. Sideways heading into this double complex of right-handed corners here at Snetterton, which absolutely destroys the front left tire, of course putting so much load on the tire for so long as well. But for Brady, he's just got to try and get into a different mindset now, try and refocus, regroup, and just get his head forward and chase down Andrew, because if he allows Andrew, like we saw last week, to get a little bit of a gap, he will take that to full advantage, a bit like Sebastian Vettel used to do in Formula 1. And once he's got that gap, there is no stopping him. So for Brady, has to be careful, but Cooper Webster looking very threatening behind, and is just closing under every little braking zone. And the fastest car on track last time around, 4th place Dane Warren, don't count him out just yet.
He was also the fastest car on the previous lap by 0.3 of a second as well. Only managed to pull a 10th over Andrew Gilliam on that lap, but 0.6 of a second to Cooper Webster up ahead. So those guys are going to be in the thick of it very shortly. Jordan Ross is having a bit of a look there around, I think that was McMullen further back in the field, but Brady Myers and Cooper Webster are so close at the moment. We're going to have a look at this because it's just looking like the pressure is starting to build up here on Brady. Now, we've seen him have some absolutely fantastic results in this series, but Cooper Webster is also a man who has pulled away a race victory, and Dane Warren has taken home 2 of these iRacing official V8 Supercar Championships. And unfortunately for him, it wasn't when we had the Aussie Driver Search sponsorship on board, because if it was, it means that he would have been driving a Toyota AE86 and a Oh my goodness, sorry, as Cooper Webster goes for a very late move down.
No.
Brady Myers, and there's a rub, and Brady's going to get crossed up. Now, surely Dane Warren's going to go through on here as well. He's going to have a big run. He's going to have to pick a way to go. He's going to go for the outside, probably the better of the two options. He's going to have to brake very late into the corner, though, and charge his way around the outside to give him the inside for the next corner. Hope they don't touch. A little bit of a lock up there, and a big strike on the curb. That's going to give a big advantage to the inside on Brady Myers there. So Brady takes that one back, and that's given Cooper Webster a big margin to play with so that he can go and chase down Andrew Gilliam. But it's not over, because Dane Warren still has an opportunity here to get very close and get a nice run. He's a little bit tighter on the apex there, as Thomas Higgins unfortunately has had an incident and has spun around to the inside of the track. Dane Warren, though, catching Brady Myers ever closer, and as they come through this little kink here, will he be close enough to have an attempt as they go into the hairpin? Everyone's been very late on the brakes as they come in here. Is it going to be any different? Dane is going to wait for another opportunity until he tries to get past that TTLE sports machine.
Yeah, and probably the smart idea as well, because right now, all this battling they're doing, look at the margin it's created to Cooper Webster. He has flown up the road, and it's going to take quite an effort for them to catch up. You can see on the little delta at the bottom of your screen there, 1.5 seconds heading into this section of corners. So that's massive, as I'm seeing a car off on the infield there. We'll see who that is. That's Thomas Hens, who's just decided to park the car. A pretty nice spectator point of view, I'll say that. Probably didn't have to pay for general admission tickets either, so Hinsey scoring quite the freebie there at the moment. But battle between Brady Myers and Dane Warren does look to have calmed down, which is good news. But more importantly, how does this affect the lap times of all these drivers? Because we're only just the halfway stage of the race. 17 laps is done, 17 to go as Andrew Gilliam goes across the stripe, and he's going to do a 109.0. Cooper retaliates with a 108.9, and Brady and Dane match your race leaders' times as well. So Cooper Webster just clawing back a little bit. And whilst it does seem like that is a long way to close up, 1.7 seconds is a lot. He gained 1/10 of a second on that lap. If he does that every lap, he is on the back bumper of Andrew on the very last lap.
Yes, but as every racing driver knows, it is one thing to catch up. It is one other thing altogether to get past. So I think Cooper Webster will be definitely trying to get there a little bit faster than that, but with the tolerances that we've seen throughout this race, it is going to be very difficult. Another man who's going around quite quickly as well is Kyle Stokes, who did fall off the back of Dane Warren for a couple of laps there, but has picked up his momentum, has actually moved himself past Jackson Suslin Harlow throughout that while we were having an eye on Cooper Webster, Brady Myers and Dane Warren there before. But a little bit further down the field, Andrew Zackerson is being chased by Jack Boyd here in the Gone Rogue Motorsports car, and Jack recovering after that big incident on the first lap there. He just got a little bit hot on the heels and unfortunately caused a big accident, but luckily he's still, for him at least, he's still got some panels left on that car to go and fight to the end with. As we're just having a look at Chris Coxhead now, who's been chasing down Brian Borg in the Premier Esports Racing team, and these guys are, again, very good drivers in this series, and we see them down in 20th and 21st, and in fact, if I'm not mistaken, Chris Coxhead started this race up in 10th, so he has not had the ideal race this evening, and he's got a little bit of rear bumper damage to that car as well. I wonder if he was maybe caught up in the incident earlier in the race. He's got his teammate behind him as well in Christian Smart, those guys both in the Zuva racing cars. So Chris now has a little bit of a look. Was that, sorry, pardon me, I think that's actually Zach Baker, who's having a bit of a look down the inside there. And oh no, it is Coxhead, as he goes around the outside, and he's going to have to work hard to get around the outside once again. Brian Borg doing a good job to defend on that inside line, but he just doesn't have quite enough as Chris Coxhead pulls in ahead. And now Michael Cracknell, who's also in that KRF Motorsports team, looking just behind, edging ever closer to Brian Borg as he's just lost a position. So now Michael Cracknell might have a bit of a shot here as they come up to turn number 1 through that high-speed right-hander. Pulls out to have a little bit of a look, and show Brian Borg that he has every intention of coming through very shortly. He's got some good speed coming out of that corner. A little bit of a wiggle on the exit though might kill any opportunity that he has to get past. And so it does. Brian Borg, even with a bit of a lock-up into turn number 2 there, is still able to hold that position. But Brady Myers up at the front of this field, still under attack from Dane Warren, and Jackson Susan-Harlow has not let go of Kyle Stokes after he's made his way through as well.
Yeah, not at all, but more importantly, the battle for the race lead on the last lap, Cooper Webster 0.4 of a second quicker. This time around, 0.2 of a second quicker. So he said he had to get there a little bit quicker than the last lap. He is doing just that. The gap has just about fallen under 1 second now. So this is closing up pretty quickly. And Andrew Gilliam is probably not feeling as comfortable as he was a couple laps ago. But check out Brady Myers and Dane Warren. Brady a little bit sideways on the exit, and that could have been the opportunity for Dane. But he lights up the rear tires as well, which means his run is not as good as it could have been. And see, still closing millimeter by millimeter, heading towards this very tricky chicane, but not close enough. Thinks about it though, definitely a very long, hard think, but not able to commit to a move, so might just settle to attack the inside curb instead of going for a move.
Yeah, he's definitely looking very racy here, is Dane, but he's won a fair few of these races, so I'm sure that he knows what he's doing behind the wheel of that Ford Falcon there, and it is very nice to see another livery on the calendar this year. And I know we're probably a little biased, Bo, but I personally think that that is one of the best looking liveries on the grid. I'm not going to say it's the best looking, but I would definitely say that it is one of the best looking. And Dane Warren very sideways, surely not into the kink, Dane. Come on, buddy. He's managed to gather it up though, and that's killed his momentum into the hairpin. He's actually just caught the grass a little bit on the entry there. So Dane Warren really pushing his Ford Falcon to the very limit. And he's going to have to find a little bit more speed elsewhere on the track if he's going to do anything to get past Brady Myers, who's putting up a good defensive effort at the moment. But these guys really need to sort themselves out, because the guys up ahead, Cooper Webster and Andrew Gilliam, they're not getting any closer. And Dane Warren is 4.2 seconds behind that lead at the moment.
Yeah, and that's not a lot. And that little bit of lawn mowing on the exit there is not going to help in any way, shape or form as well. And getting grass on the tires, just a long right-hander, is not going to help either. So that's actually going to hurt him quite a lot. You can see Brady Myers gets a little bit of breathing room, but not all the TTL cars have as much breathing room, because this Sheila has Jack Boyd just in front, and well, he's got a pretty air-conditioned car. And that's going to be helping him a little bit in terms of driver comfort, but straight line speed will be hurting. It doesn't look to be hurting him all too much, because he does look like he's going to be on the attack in the next few laps. And Jack Boyd doing a very strong performance over the last few races. Of course, I remember back to Daytona Road Course, where he was extremely quick, really mixing it up with the race leaders. So he's the driver that has a lot of talent and can really fight for these race wins if he can learn how to do it consistently. But that is always the struggle with drivers. Can they do it consistently? And while Mitch Silak, we've seen him consistently be up in the front of races before, but right now he has to try and find a way by. He's just not getting the ground that he needs. But Cooper Webster, he most definitely is finding the ground that he needs.
Yeah, that gap's down to 0.7 of a second now. And as you said just previously, Bo, it was just come under a second just a lap or so ago. So Cooper really pushing that ART machine to its limits and bringing that gap in as quickly as he possibly can. He's got a little bit of rib bumper damage to that car as well, just missing a little bit of that rear left quarter there, which is actually a very peculiar piece of damage to get, it has to be said. But he's charging on in that Logitech and Speed Cafe sponsored machine. Meanwhile, further back down the field, a little bit of a battle here between Zackerson, Coxhead, and Zackerson and Mitchell Cracknell, Michael Cracknell there, and these guys having a good little battle. And Zackerson, unfortunately, is going to lose out on that one, it seems, and he's now I think he's actually lost a couple of spots there. Just lost 2 spots, so presumably Brian Borg got in through there as well. And Crackers has been trying to hunt down Borg for the last couple of laps, so they both must have gotten through at the same time. And Cracknell's still struggling to find a way past, as we now look at Jackson Susan-Harlow, who's looking to come for an attack on Kyle Stokes after he lost the position earlier in the race. He's going to see if he can make it by again. Unfortunately for Suzlin Harlow, he's not going to be able to do it this time. Kyle Stokes putting on a good defensive effort and has got plenty of ponies under that ERT Commodore's bonnet there, which are going to give him a little bit of breathing room as they come down into turn 1, and he'll have a nice gap into turn 2 as well, which has really been the main overtaking opportunity for this race. It's a very tight track with quite a few high-speed corners, so it is very difficult to close up to your opponent there, but most of the guys have been doing a fairly good job this evening. We have seen some fairly late moves into that hairpin though, possibly out of desperation just to try and get through. Having a look now though at Zach Baker and Christian Smart for 15th and 16th position, and those are two cleaner looking cars in the mid pack there, and Zach Baker, another driver who...
Stokes! That was a massive moment for Kyle Stokes. Sorry to cut across you there, but that has put him under all kinds of pressure now from the TTL Esports car. And you can see that he's locked up out of nowhere. Jackson Suzlin Harlow's gone off on the road as well. And that could potentially bring Michael Taliancic into this as well. If he cannot recover it soon enough, it looks like he is back on the road. But Kyle Stokes, that was a massive moment heading through the bomb hole section of corners. You have a look on the replay right about now, firing into the left-hander through the right-hander. Now on the power, and this is where things get extremely sketchy, and somehow, some way, he holds onto this, lights it up, and bang, massive sideways the inside of the grass, and had to defend from the TTL car.
Yeah, it looks like Suzlin Harlow, in his effort to just try and be as close as he possibly could, I think he might have locked a rear brake there and just pitched himself to the right-hand side a little too aggressively, and unfortunately not able to make the corner. And that's very unfortunate for him. Michael Cracknell coming under attack from Brian Borg after Crackers has just gotten through on Borg. So these guys having a bit of a scrap here, but Crackers has got good traction coming out of that hairpin. Andrew Zackerson in the Redback Racing Team car, though, he's looking very racy right now. He might even push Michael Cracknell up through. Yes, the Daytona 500 is coming up next week, and these guys are getting some practice in early. Unfortunately, though, that little push is not going to be enough for Crackers to get his way back past Borg. So after so much effort trying to get past, Brian Borg is able to snatch that position straight back, and Michael Cracknell's going to have to search in his little bag of tricks for something else so that he can get past Brian Borg once more.
Yeah, so we'll see what he can do, but it's not going to be an easy thing to find a way past, because we're down to just 8 laps to go now, and we all know that as the laps tick down, the defense always gets a little bit stronger for all these drivers, and Marlon Mullen is going to find that out the hard way, because he has to find a way past James Scott in the Evolution Racing Team car, and of course that ERT, the drivers all have their own unique color combinations. And I've got to say that red and white does look pretty darn nice for James Scott in the Commodore there, but unfortunately for him, it's not going to be helping him go any faster. Red is apparently meant to help him go faster, but for the 24 car of Andrew Zackerson, well, he doesn't have any red on his car at all, and therefore finds himself apparently facing the wrong direction on track. So we'll see what happens here, as he was coming at a big attack from the 18 car behind, has a massive wiggle out of brakes, and almost collected the car in front and somehow gathered it up. Actually did a very nice job in the end, but that would not help his positions by any means.
No, well, he was very lucky not to get too mixed up and take anyone out there. And having a look once again at James Scott and Marlon McMullen. Marlon now looking really aggressive and looking for a way through here. Took a little bit of the inside curb through there, and he's very close now, probably close enough to have a bit of a go. And he does go down the inside, sliding it through. And in fact, he's going to slide too far up the circuit, and James Scott is going to be able to come right back at him. Great piece of heads-up driving there by Scott, as Marlon just absolutely came up in there sideways. So a good attacking effort, but an even better defensive effort from James Scott. And I do agree with you that red and white livery on that ERT machine does look very good. I think blue and purple would look a little bit better personally, but that's just me. I'm not sure. But anyway, they'll continue on regardless and have a great little battle nonetheless. And the two Gone Rogue Motorsports cars are in battles as well. And speaking of it, I think that was Jack Boyd, was it? It was Christian Smart, pardon me, who was having a bit of a battle there with Chris Coxhead and just did not manage to sort it out. And they were on the straight when that happened as well. So we'll have a bit of a look as to what happens here. A little bit of a touch initially, and Coxhead gets run out very wide. And I mean, he could not have been using any more of the road there. So unfortunately for Christian Smart, maybe coming to the right, the extra meter or so would have prevented him from having that accident there. But now James Scott is going to lose that position of Marlon McMullen as the two-time champion does make his way through the Evolution Racing Team car, but he's looking not particularly strong in a straight line at the moment. And James Scott is going to have a little bit of a look around a couple of ways. He's going to have a few different looks on the same corner, and in fact, that's kind of tripped up him enough that it's looking like Marlon McMullen doesn't really know what's going on here, and he doesn't really know what to do. He's kind of all over the track trying to defend, and now that's allowing the car behind them, which is Jordan Ross, to get in on the action as well. And Jordan also in one of those ERT machines, so he's now got two ERT machines behind him. Does Marlon McMullen, and that's not going to bode particularly well for him. He's going to really have to break away from this very quickly unless he wants to be in a world of pain from those two cars. And it looks like actually up at the front of the field, a little just ahead of these guys, actually, Ethan Warren and James Duckworth are having a little bit of a battle as well. Unfortunately for Dane Warren, he hasn't been able to make any inroads on Brady Myers. Those guys have kind of settled themselves out a bit. Cooper Webster still just chinking away piece by piece at the armor of Andrew Gilliam, who's holding steadfast for the time being. It's kind of down in the mid-pack where all these battles are happening at the moment, and looks like Michael Cracknell is going to have a look on James Mackey as they come into this very technical, very tight section of the track here as we come through this kink and then in for a triple, or even it could be a quadruple ride or just a one ride. It's kind of hard to say. It's very right. That can be said. And
so what you're saying is there's no right answer.
No, there's no right answer for it. Not at all. Thank you, Bo. And that's the last time Bo ever commentated on a SimSpeed TV network broadcast. Andrew Gilliam starting to weave over the down the back straight a little bit, and Cooper Webster's right on the back of him now. He's made up 0.2 of a second on this lap, and with 3 laps to go, I can see fireworks in the eyes right now of both of these guys.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and both battles are getting a little bit closer now because Cooper Webster gets the gap down to just 0.3 of a second. So this could be the fight for the race as we head to just 3 laps to go between Cooper and Andrew Gilliam, two very young drivers who are up and coming, and both have a lot of potential. Cooper Webster already with one V8 Scops race under his belt, but of course, can Andrew Gilliam get a second official series race win in a row? That's a very good question, because right now I have no idea, but all I do know is that he gets a very nice run out of that little left-hander, which is so tricky because of course the car is a little bit unloaded there and you're trying to put the power down, so the rear left tire is going to just want to spin up as much as it can, but he controls it beautifully. Cooper Webster not controlling the brake modulation as much as he would want. He was a little bit wiggly into that corner. The car was not stable at all, but here he comes through this next section of corners. We have to commit. The car compresses down at the bottom and things get tight very, very quick for the two drivers as the car just wants to basically scrape along the ground, which forces the car out wide. And we've seen so many drivers in this race already get caught out, but here we go. 2 laps to go here at the Snetterton 200, and Cooper continually putting the pressure. You can see Gilliam pretty much ducking and weaving down the straight now, doesn't want to give any slipstream advantage at all to the Evolution Racing Team car behind as they fire into turn 1 for the penultimate time. And look at the speed and angle of Cooper Webster, really angling the car for maximum attack to get a good run and try and fire it down into the hairpin. Cannot do it though, nowhere near close enough. Gilliam nailed this corner on the last lap. Can he do it for the second lap in a row? The answer is yes, kind of. A little bit of a wiggle, but does get it down enough to the point where Webster doesn't have enough of a run. It's still stagnant at 0.3 of a second, and that's what he has to do on this final lap as well. Has to make sure that he gets everything right from here on. through this very tricky little left-hander. Now you have to slow the car down into the right, don't use much curb. Andrew is driving very well at the moment, and that is what he has to do. But Zach, this final lap is where the pressure really mounts, and Cooper Webster, if there's any opportunity, he has to go for it.
Well, hopefully Andrew knows for his sake that so long as he does exactly what he has done for the previous 33 laps around this circuit, then he should be able to take this home, as Chris Coxhead is having a little bit of an issue in the dying stages of this race. And we'll just get a quick replay of that and see what happened to the Zuva Racing driver, as he actually went for a bit of a move there on Zach Baker, just caught the grass on the inside on that heavy braking zone, and lost it all by himself. Lucky Zach did not get taken out in that as well. So Andrew Gilliam on the final lap of this race. Dane Warren still chasing down Brady Myers. Both of these guys are very capable of making a pass, as Cooper Webster is definitely capable of making a pass, but he's just ever so slightly too far back to have a go into this section of the track here. It's going to have to be a drag race if he wants to make it work, or a very late lunge. He's very good on the brakes through this section of the track. He might use that advantage to maybe just bump Andrew Gilliam and give him a bit of a bump to unsettle the car, but it looks like he's going to go for it, is he? He's very close. Is there going to be a little bit of a bump in the final corner here from Cooper Webster? No, but he's going to have the wider line. Unfortunately, locks that inside tyre. And for the second week in a row, Pursuit Sim Racing are going to walk home with another trophy, because Andrew Gilliam is going to take out round number 9 of the Aussie Driver Search iRacing V8 Supercars Championship here at Snetterton. And a fantastic performance from him, as Cooper Webster and Brady Myers do round out the podium for us this evening. Ethan Warren and James Duckworth still battling on to the very end, and I think Ethan's actually gotten past James Duckworth in the last couple of laps as well. So very nicely done there by Ethan Warren, coming home inside the top 10. Justin Wallace and Christian Smart still having a little bit of a battle. Obviously Christian in the wall just a couple of laps ago, wants to make up one more place, recover a little bit of I rating before the end of this race. He's only got one corner to do it, and he is very far back, but not impossible. He's been pretty quick throughout this race, but not the exit that he needed.
On the final corner. Loxton spins on the final corner. He lets Brock Cadday and Ian Bird through as well. So that's a disaster for him, and well, his race has not gone very well. Of course, taken out on, I think, was second or third lap, and it's not got any better. So for Brett Loxton, his race just goes a little bit worse, as on the in-lap, Cooper Webster's getting a bit of a hit from Brady Myers. So not sure what's going on there, but regardless, what a great race that was once again, Zach.
Yeah, that was absolutely fantastic. A little bit unfortunate that Richard Hampstead was knocked out of that bout a little bit earlier on, but Andrew Gilliam did put up a very strong performance throughout the entire race, and also defended very well to take home round 9 of the Aussie Driver Search iRacing V8 Supercar Series here on the iRacing Esports Network, who was followed very closely by Evolution Racing Team's Cooper Webster and TLTL's Esports Brady Myers, who was under constant attack throughout the entire last section of that race, from Dane Warren in the Logitech G Altus Esports car, with Kyle Stokes in the Evolution Racing Team car, bringing home the top 5 position. Jackson Suslan-Harlow saw 6th position. Michael Taliancic, a quiet race for him, but a very good performance up into 7th in the 11th car. So little Easter egg there for everybody as well. Richard Hampstead, unfortunately, commanding this race in the early stages, was turned around by our race winner, Andrew Gilliam, with a very either late move or an out-braking maneuver. We're not sure at this point, but I'm sure we'll find out in the near future. And it was Ethan Warren and James Duckworth that rounded out the top 10.
Position number 11 goes to Jamie McKnight, with another good drive for him from 24th on the grid, actually making up a great amount of spots. Marlon McMullen, unfortunately, didn't make up any spots. He fell down the order 1 spot from his qualifying effort. James Scott with a good effort as well, ahead of his teammate Jordan Ross, and Jack Boyd rounds out the top 15, with Zach Baker only narrowly missing out on the top 15, ahead of Chris Coxhead, James Mackay, Michael Cracknell, and Brian Bork, who round out the top 20.
Then we had Andrew Zackerson and Damian Johnston, Greg Sharp, Justin Wallace, and Christian Smart. Brock Cadday managed to come home in 26th position, And the first of our finishers a lap down, Ian Bird, Mitchell Sealak, Brett Loxton was 6 laps down when he had that spin. So no big loss for him there. Thomas Hins, unfortunately, parking it on the inside of the circuit early. Wayne Burke, 27 laps down, and Corey Preston as well, 33 laps, so didn't even make the first lap, unfortunately for him. But what is not unfortunate for all of you watching at home is that we have plenty coming up on the iRacing Esports Network and on SimSpeed television for the rest of the week. On Wednesday night, we have the Australian Rallycross Series, as well as the Alpine Star Geodesic Racing Sprint Series Australia, which are GTE cars. They'll be running from Interlagos this week. We've seen some absolutely fantastic racing this season so far. Bo was even lucky enough to pick the right car and get a podium last week out at Sebring, which was fantastic for him, but great racing throughout that series. Also on Thursday, we have the Australian Formula 3 Championship, which has put on good enough racing to make nearly, I think it was the second top spot for the iRacing Top 10 Moments of last month. So great racing in that series as well. And then Friday evening, we have the Australian Online Supercars Championship, which is always fantastic racing as well, and a good little indication as to who's possibly going to do quite well for these official V8 Supercar races on the Monday evening, which next week will be coming to you from Road Atlanta. So I will thank Bo Albert once again. Thank you, Bo, for coming and joining me in the commentary booth this evening. And I didn't say it at the beginning of the broadcast either, but thank you very much to Jay Kennedy, who's been bringing you all these beautiful pictures this evening. If you haven't done it as well so far, ladies and gentlemen, please do make sure to hit subscribe on the iRacing Esports Network page. If you'd like to as well, jump over to the SimSpeed TV channel and give us a subscribe on there as well. Make sure you like the video if you enjoyed it. And we thank all of our fantastic viewers for joining us in the chat throughout this race as well. My name's Zach Hanlon, and I will see you next week for the Aussie Driver Search iRacing V8 Supercar Series at Road Atlanta. So you all stay well, and we will see you then.